Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome on certainly here a very grey Wednesday morning to this webinar, which is hosted by Cement Europe. My name is Carolyn Jewell, and I'm the Senior Manager for Biodiversity and Natural Resources at CRH. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you today to guide you through this event. Today, we're focusing on extraction to restoration, the role of quarry rehabilitation. It poses to be a very exciting session. I think the message is now really well cemented in protection is not even near enough to really reverse biodiversity loss. And we really need to work collaboratively to look at how we can proactively restore landscapes. And certainly with land dotted across Europe, with quarries here and there, we're really going to explore today what's the role in the cement sector in contributing to this restoration. I'd like to say that this session will be recorded and available afterwards, and we will also distribute the slides, so no worries about that. We welcome questions throughout, so there's the Q&A function, so at any point you have any questions for our speakers, then please pop your questions in there, and we'll have a short Q&A after each presentation. A quick heads up too, you've got to work during this event as well, so we will be testing your knowledge, and there'll be a few questions dotted through the webinar to keep you on your toes. So to get you all warmed up and brains in gear, let's start with the first poll. If I could ask that to be put up, and we will test your knowledge. So, question one, what is the highest share of restoration type in limestone quarries? So of all the restoration that's going on at our limestone quarries across Europe, which do you think is the highest hectareage? So we've got natural forest, we've got grasslands, lake and agriculture. So if I can ask you to make your choices. Couple more seconds. Which one are you going to go for? Okay, let's see what we've got as the answer. Okay, so I'm not sure if we can get the answers up, but certainly the answer is natural forest, and I think this is a really good reflection of where we need to go with restoration, and certainly ties into some of the targets within the nature restoration law. So we will now move to our first speaker to really provide some context around kind of the background of this webinar and the work of Cement Europe and what they're doing on the Biodiversity Roadmap. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Alexandra Silva, who's the Environmental and Biodiversity Manager at CECIL, and very importantly, the Chair of the Biodiversity Task Force at Cement Europe. So Alexandra, if I can pass over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. So just to say, first of all, of course, good morning. Welcome to this webinar. I think I don't know how many webinars we've been done since the implementation of the roadmap, but I think it's the fifth or sixth webinar. So it's a pleasure being here again, of course, to present and give you an overview of the Biodiversity Roadmap that was launched a few years ago. It was launched in 2022. So just to share my presentation, a few slides. So just confirm if you are seeing the slides. Yes,
yes, we can see.
Okay, so the roadmap was launched in 2022. It was during an event in the Green Week. The roadmap was developed by the Biodiversity Task Force, my colleagues, and it represents the Cement Europe vision to biodiversity in and around quarries in the coming years. We also had the collaboration of BirdLife and CERD Europe, the Society of Restoration, that kindly collaborate in our biodiversity roadmap. So one of our goals with this roadmap was to contribute to the halting of the loss of biodiversity during the whole life cycle of the quarry. And when we start developing the roadmap, we want to contribute to initiatives and goals of the Europe. And basically, I can say that some initiatives were the basis to develop the roadmap. And we have here some examples. Of course, the United Nations Decade for Ecosystem Restoration, the Sustainable Development Goal 15, Life on Lands, the directives, Habitats of Birds and Habitats directives that include a lot of protected animal, plants, and habitats. Of course, the Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 by the European Union, and two important areas that we dedicated, two focus areas in the roadmap. That was this group of species, that is the pollinators, and also the invasive alien species regulation. So the roadmap basically is divided in four focus areas. So we have actions and targets in each focus area. We present in the roadmap an introduction, a vision, what we want to contribute to each focus area, and of course the targets and actions that we define until 2030 in each focus area. We also develop some KPIs to measure the implementation of the roadmap. And since we launched the roadmap, we have been collecting this data. So the focus areas are ecosystem rehabilitation and ecosystem service. This is a webinar dedicated to this focus area. We already did one webinar regarding pollinators, the group of these species, invasive species, but in the roadmap, we only focus on plants. And the last one dedicated this focus area to protected species. So what is the goal or of the roadmap? The roadmap, it's a tool to help and guide companies to implement biodiversity and the process of rehabilitation in our quarries. And also it's something to inspire collaboration between our sector, the cement sector, and also to have collaboration with other stakeholders like academia, political institutions, NGOs. So it's a tool to guide us to implement biodiversity in the cement industry. So the scope of the roadmap is to limestone quarries that provide the raw materials for the production of cement. However, our members that also have, of course, the aggregate business can extend this roadmap to the aggregate sector, for example. So it's up to each company if they want to extend the roadmap to aggregate queries. So I will not enter in detail on the 11 KPIs, I think it's 11 KPIs that we have, but we set some KPIs for each focus area because it's important to measure the implementation of the roadmap. And we collect these KPIs, as I said, every year from our members. And we discuss this data, and we already published a brochure in 2024 with some examples of the KPIs with some data. So since we launched the roadmap, we have been doing several communication actions. We have been promoting webinars, internal webinars for our members, but also external webinars where we include all stakeholders. This is one of the examples. So we launched in 2022. We already done some webinars dedicated to temporary nature. One of my favorites, I must say, pollinators. What's buzzing in our quarries? It was an external. I think it was one of the big success of the webinars. We also did a podcast. Everything is available online and in the channel of the Cement Europe. And the last one, we did two webinars, one dedicated to the protected species. And this year, we already did an internal webinar for our members discussing an important topic that is invasive species. So just to highlight that, what is the best of these webinars? It promotes discussion between the cement sector, but also it involves other stakeholders like the European Commissions, the academia, our other associations, where we can discuss how we contribute to the loss of biodiversity, how we can especially focus on the rehabilitation of our quarries and enhancing also the ecological values of the restored areas. So I think during these years, we have been discussing this and showing our case studies of the cement industry, also gathering here a lot of knowledge from our stakeholders. So I think it is good initiatives that promote this discussion. And for me, we need also to continue to promote these webinars. I talk about the brochure. So in 2024, we published a brochure. It's online. You can see the progress on our KPIs regarding our 4 focus areas in the roadmap. We also have several case studies within the cement sector. So it's available online. I leave here the link in the presentation that you will have access later. So I invite you to spend a little bit time knowing a little bit what we are doing regarding rehabilitation, pollinators, invasive species, and of course, also protected species. Just because we are in a webinar dedicated to rehabilitation or restoration, just to show you some data, in the brochure you have KPIs per focus area, and this is one, the rehabilitation. We have 2 KPIs dedicated to this area. One is the hectares that the members have been restored since the beginning of the quarry and in the year that we report, and also the type of restoration that they implement. So our members mostly implement natural forests, and you see in the first questions in the pool, there was the correct answer, but also they implement grassland, the habitats of grassland in our quarries. So this is the main type of restored areas, and natural forest means, of course, that the members only use native species in this type of rehabilitation. So just to provide you some data, and just to say that we are also collecting this data every year. So maybe it's time to us also to publish another brochure with the progress of the roadmap. Here is a challenge for the task force. So my final slide, I said in the beginning that this was developed by the Biodiversity Task Force. We are a small group, I think, compared to the other task force, but I have to say that I think we are very active. So I have to thank my colleagues. Cass is also here as a moderator. She's part of our task force. And this was done by people from the industry that knows the challenge that we have and we face regarding rehabilitation, and also know the opportunities that we can create with the process of rehabilitation. And I always said, because I worked since 2005 with rehabilitation, it's not an easy process. It's a process that we need to learn together with each other, and also with our work in our quarries. So many thanks to our members of the task force. We have, of course, our work in our companies, in our sector, but we also spend some time working within this task force, and it's important for me to highlight this process. So for my side, finally, just to give you an overview of the roadmap, and Cass, back to you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. That was a brilliant overview of what we've been working so hard on over the past few years, and it gives you a flavour of how not only we want to kind of upskill our own sector, but how important it is to collaborate with externals. And these webinars have been a great way to reach out and really build that discussion. Thank you so much, Alexandra. So we're going to move on, and we have another poll question for you now. Given what you've just heard, it's a little bit of a trick question, but let's see how you get on with the next poll. So we're going to focus now on the number of hectares that were restored in 2023. We're focusing on that 2023 in Cement Europe's in the quarries that belong to the members of Cement Europe. So we have more than 500, more than 1,000, more than 1,500, or more than 2,000? So please, can you place your votes? Okay, let's see. Let's see how you voted. More than 1,500. So fantastic. We, in 2023, through the data gathering that Cement Europe do on our KPIs, we recorded that there were 1,585 hectares that were restored. So this really shows the great potential. And if you think this is just the quarries related to cement production. So there are many other quarries from all different material types out there in across Europe. And just think of that potential in terms of restoration and how this can contribute to reversing biodiversity loss. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so I talk about biodiversity loss and reversing it. So one of the responses by the EU to the continued decline of biodiversity has really been the first of its kind, and this is the Nature Restoration Law. And to tell us more, and particularly around the next steps in terms of implementation, I'm very, very happy to introduce Przemysław Ogiński, who's the Policy Officer at the European Commission Nature Conservation Unit. So Przemysław, can I hand over to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you very much for the invitation to this very interesting webinar. And I'm very pleased to see that the quarrying sector is still so actively involved in biodiversity promotion and in such an interest of the topic among your stakeholders. So if we can start with my presentation, please. Okay, so next slide, please. So maybe just to give a little bit of context first, why the European Commission concluded that there was such a need for adoption of a dedicated act on nature restoration. As some of you may know, every 6 years, the Commission collects information about the state of our biodiversity, specifically the protected habitats and species. And we have had 3 cycles of collecting this information. And unfortunately, to date, this picture is rather bad. The last data collection cycle showed that only 15% of our habitats are in a good conservation status. And the cycle that has come to an end last year and that the member states are now reporting to the Commission is unlikely to show any major improvement in this regard, unfortunately. Also, we know very well the link between the climate change and the biodiversity situation, both in terms of the mitigation and adaptation efforts. It is very important to find synergies between nature protection and restoration and climate actions. And also there is a strong biodiversity case for protecting and restoring our nature. According to the European Central Bank, approximately 72% of companies in the Eurozone are highly dependent on at least one ecosystem service. Also, it is estimated that €1 invested in nature restoration brings approximately €8 in economic return. So obviously there is this very strong case for nature restoration. Hence, the proposal for a regulation on restoring our nature. Next slide, please. This proposal came in the context of the European Green Deal that was adopted by the Commission in 2019, and as part of this European Green Deal, the Commission proposed also the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, which had four major components. One of them, the first goal concerning nature protection, so protecting at least 30% of the EU territory, including with 10% by strict protection, and also the commitment to propose a dedicated act on nature restoration. The next slide, please. And this proposal specifically materialized in June 2022. The Commission adopted the proposal for a regulation on nature restoration. And after 2 years of very intense and heated debates, both in the Parliament and in the Council, with razor-thin majorities, the legislation passed, and it entered into force in 2024, in August 2024. And so hence now for a little bit more than a year, we are in the process of implementation of this legislation. The next slide, please. So very briefly first about the overarching objectives of the nature restoration regulation. So the regulation has essentially one big goal of protecting and restoring our nature. Specifically, the co-legislators agreed to restore 20% of EU land and sea by 2030, and all ecosystems in need of restoration by 2050. Important thing to notice is that restoration is understood both as the process of actively and passively assisting the recovery of ecosystems in order to enhance biodiversity and ecosystem resilience. So we have both the important component of passive restoration, so essentially allowing the nature to take its course, but also active restoration is very relevant and very important, and I think that the quarrying sector has a particular role in this regard in respect of active restoration measures. Next slide, please. So in addition to this overall broad objectives, we also have specific restoration targets in relation to individual ecosystem types. We don't have time here in this webinar to discuss all these targets in detail. I will just mention that they relate to habitats types already protected by the Habitats Directive, plus some additional habitat types, mostly in the context of marine ecosystems. We also have objectives in relation to protected species, urban ecosystems, river connectivity, pollinators, agroecosystems, forest ecosystems, and a specific target of planting 3 billion additional trees by 2030. The next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we are now really in the process of starting the implementation of this important act. And the first thing that the member states, which are the main actors in terms of the implementation of the regulation, so the first thing that they have to focus is the preparation of the national restoration plans, which include restoration needs and measures. For the moment, the member states, they have to describe in detail which measures they need to undertake by 2032, but they should also identify the broad objectives also for 2040 and 2050. They have to also specify the timeline for the implementation of individual restoration measures, also identify the financial resources required to implement these measures and the financing needs for the implementation. And also very important, the member states have to identify the expected benefits. So synergies with other policies, including climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation, risk management, forestry policy, agriculture policy, other policies, and the nature restoration regulation specifically also mentions the key role of the key critical raw materials that also have to be taken into account when adopting this national restoration plans. Another very important thing that is also specifically mentioned in the regulation is the need to involve all the relevant stakeholders in the implementation and preparation of these plans. So obviously the stakeholders from the quarrying and mining sector, they should also be involved in the preparation of these plans, and I would hope that your stakeholders they are already involved in this process. The next slide, please. And in terms of the timeline for the national restoration plans, earlier this year, the Commission, together with the member states, adopted an implementing regulation on the format of the National Restoration Plan. They are stabilized, adopted, and now the key action is to work on the preparation of these plans. The member states have to submit them to the Commission in the form of the draft by the 1st September next year. By the 1st of March the following year. So within 6 months, the Commission has time to assess the draft restoration plans and provide this assessment to the member states. And the member states should take into account this feedback and finalize their restoration plans and publish them by the 1st of September 2027. After that period, after every 6 years, I believe, there is a requirement to revise the national restoration plans following the developments and any necessary adjustments, having seen the progress with the restoration measures. The next slide, please. And of course, the very important issue to consider at every stage of the implementation of the regulation is the financing needs that are required to implement it. And when working on the draft regulation, on the proposal, the Commission assessed the costs of the regulation, and initially these costs were put around 6 to 8 billion euro. But then after the regulation was adopted, we have reassessed these figures and concluded that the cost will probably be quite substantially higher than that, between 11 and 13 billion euro. So these are important investments that will have to be made. By August this year, the Commission should have adopted a financial report. This was not possible, unfortunately, within the indicated deadline. This report is being finalized now, and I hope it will be adopted as soon as possible. But one of the reasons why it was delayed was the fact that in July this year, the Commission proposed the new financial framework for the next 7-year budget cycle, which had to be properly reflected in this report. So in terms of the funding that will be necessary to implement the regulation, in the Commission, we see a very important role of the public funding, so both the EU funds and the national funds, but also the private funding, as the public funds unfortunately will not be able to cover all the needs. In terms of the current financing period, the Commission has already dedicated quite important resources to biodiversity, which can also benefit the restoration agenda. So by the end of this funding cycle, by 2027, the member states should spend at least 10% of the EU budget on biodiversity measures. We are not probably going to reach this figure, but the progress is however quite substantial, and under all the major relevant funds, there's been funding available for biodiversity measures and also restoration. And for the next funding cycle, we proposed that 35% of the whole EU budget is dedicated to green transition, and this includes climate and biodiversity, and we hope that the member states will make a good use of this funding also to finance restoration measures. But as I said, public funding will not be sufficient. Hence, the Commission in July this year also proposed a roadmap towards nature credits. So essentially making seeing a bigger role for the private sector, including through biodiversity certification and biodiversity credits, to promote the actors, the operators who proactively invest in nature restoration. And I hope that also the quarrying sector will be able to take advantage of this new opportunity. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm looking forward to any questions or discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was a super helpful and useful overview of what's happening. I think sometimes we can get a little lost in all the movements. So that was a really good summary. Thank you very much. Now, please, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A. I see we have one, but I wanted to hold that one for the moment because I think that might be an interesting question for all the panelists to chip into. But if there are any other questions, please put them in. I have one. It's really good to see the timeline for the development of the national restoration plans. And I know this might be a pretty difficult question for you placed in the Commission, but how would you see the best way for us to be able to engage in those plans?
So as I mentioned, the regulation specifically calls for involvement of all the relevant stakeholders in the process of the implementation, in the process of preparation and implementation of the national restoration plans. Essentially, from what we know, all the member states are now actively working on the preparation of the NRPs. Some of them have created dedicated work groups. Some of them are working on specific ecosystem types. They created subgroups on the specific ecosystem types. I imagine some ecosystem types would be more relevant for the quarrying sector than others. And as you mentioned, the sector is very involved in the restoration of forests, but also grasslands and some other habitat types. I know that the representatives of the sector, Aggregates Europe, is also involved in our expert group on the nature regulation. So first of all, I would suggest that sharing of information between the stakeholders is very important. Then I would suggest proactively contacting the competent national authorities. These are usually departments in the ministries of environment or climate, or depending on the structure of the national administrations. But there are these dedicated expert groups under in the national administrations who are working on it, and bearing in mind the scale of the regulation and the number of stakeholders, they might not always be able to proactively directly reach them. So my suggestion would be to proactively, for the sector, to proactively reach out to them and contribute with your extensive experience on this issue.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was very helpful and a call to action to my colleagues on the line today. You know, reach out to your national groups and see how we can get our voice in there. As Przemysław points out, you know, we're well practiced in the art of restoration, so it would be really good for us to engage with this. I've got another question that's come in, again a little tricky given how far we are with the credits roadmap, but the question reads: how can the nature restoration credits be used by the private sector?
So I think we are at the very early stages of development of this new tool. In the roadmap for nature credits, the Commission commits to first of all further work on this topic, and also to developing some pilot schemes on this topic. So the idea is that the operators who are actively involved in restoration measures, they would have their activities certified. And then these certificates could be later turned into some sort of nature credits. So a tool that would allow the monetization of this activities. I think we are still, you know, quite early in the process, and it is difficult to say specifically how it can work. We need to make sure that we avoid any sort of greenwashing in the process. And we also need to avoid the situation where this is used for offsetting major damage done, you know, in other locations. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the stakeholders and the operators who really are proactively involved in restoration measures, that they see an economic benefit from it, be it by you know, purchase of these credits from the other operators, or or not through some kind of subsidy schemes from public sources or charities. The important thing is that these measures, they have to be certified, and they have to really deliver concrete actions on the ground in return for economic benefit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. Right. We will now move on. There's some questions still coming in, but we will address them later on in the webinar. But let's move on for now. Another quick poll for you. So we've been focusing very much in the questions on habitats, but let's turn our attention to those species, because of course that's a key part of why we're doing this restoration, is to bring back these species populations. So what do you think is the most common type of protected species found in quarries that are being worked for limestone? We've got insects, birds, plants, or mammals. Of course, all of these species are benefiting greatly from the quarry landscape, whether that be the active quarry that's naturally regenerating, or whether it be through active restoration. So let's have the answer. If we could show the answer. There we go. Birds, yes, fantastic. Birds, the most common protected species. Possibly not too surprising given the number with the birds directive, but we certainly have a huge number of birds, and hopefully you joined for the protected species webinar that we had last year. If not, do feel free to access it. It was a great show of all the different types of protected species that are thriving across our quarries in Europe. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the potential of quarries. So let's further explore some of the opportunities and challenges that this regulation can bring. And at this point, I would be really happy to introduce our next speaker, Nigel Symes, who's the Conservation Partnerships Manager for BirdLife Europe and Central Asia. Nigel, happy to pass to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaz, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. It's brilliant that the Cement Europe are addressing this, which I think is a really kind of key topic area for the moment. I am slightly kind of challenged in my own mind just right now, because I think quite a few of the slides that I had prepared for me are slightly already being covered by Przemysław in his very, very good introduction to the nature restoration law. So I'm going to, when I present, I'm going to skip through some of them and see if we can just focus on some of the key points. Quick introduction to BirdLife. BirdLife Europe and Central Asia is one of 6 regions of BirdLife, which is a global entity with 133 partners. These are independent and biodiversity NGOs around the world. In Europe, Central Asia, we have 47 of those partners, and we have thank you. Yeah, okay. We work primarily as a sort of hub for those partners. We represent them as in a policy voice, and we aim to capacity build and support partners. Often some of these are very small organizations in countries with lots of biodiversity and lots of threats to that biodiversity. We also, as my job title might suggest, work in partnership and particularly with businesses and particularly in that context with the minerals extractive sector. And we have two well-established partnerships with one with Heidelberg Cement Materials rather, and one with Sibelco. And we have a third with another business that we're just developing at the moment. Okay, next slide, please. And we'll go through these fairly quickly. Yeah, so this has all been very largely covered, and just to reiterate the scale of need and therefore from the biodiversity strategy, the need for the restoration law, and BirdLife as part of a consortium of NGOs have lobbied and supported this process all the way through, particularly as was pointed out right at the end where the vote was very, very tight, and so a lot of work done with MEPs to get this critical legislation through. Next slide. And this is whilst there were obviously some tensions in the political debate, this is the legislation that is very significantly welcomed by civil society and the public of the member states, and by scientists, by civil society groups, and of course by business. And we as the consortium were very, very grateful to receive support from Cement Bureau, now obviously Cement Europe, and the others in representatives of the minerals sector for this legislation. I think this is really important kind of collaboration between the NGO sector and the business sector to drive this forward. Next slide, please. This has been very well covered. I don't think there's much to linger on here other than simply to point out what is the obvious from the point of view of you guys and the kind of role that you have here in terms of contribution to protected habitats, to through that helping to protect species, provision for pollination as an ecosystem service could be very, very important, particularly from limestone grasslands in the context of surrounding agriculture. And then as the data suggests, through helping to replace forest landscapes, forest ecosystems. So just to underline the importance of the role that the industry is undertaking. And I was also impressed by the scale at which the members are restoring, and if you think that's an annual thing and therefore this is cumulative year on year, and as new quarries are opened, old phases are being restored, this is kind of for us it's a really vital part of the industry, and how it can contribute and deliver nature positive, particularly when some of those landscapes that it is starting to open new quarries in are already heavily degraded from a biodiversity point of view through intensive agriculture and so on. So really important role. Thank you. Next slide, please. So again, looking at what was covered by the previous speaker, and the role of the member states in their development of the national restoration plans, but also where you as a sector fit in. And I think the I'm hoping that through this you'll start to see that this is a positive for the industry. This is an opportunity for quarrying of all materials. Can contribute to delivery of these national plans towards the targets, and not just by the scale of habitat, but where exactly is that in relation to need? Which measures is it addressing? What the timeline looks like, but also, and I actually didn't put a tag to this, but your contribution as experts in land restoration. And so being able to contribute to populating the knowledge gap and helping to kind of present a rational implementation framework, if you like, for how this can go forward, which then links to the stakeholder input and would echo the call to input into national stakeholder engagement consultations with some priority. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the funding and finance in a minute. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, please. So this has been covered again, but I'd just like to emphasize where we are now, and we are over halfway through the timeline for developing the first drafts for submission in September, beginning of September next year. So just to re-emphasize, to input with some impetus, some urgency, to ensure that the national plans are populated by really sound planned scoping of restoration potential. Next slide, please. So in regards to how industry business moves forward, and thinking of this through the context of yourselves as quarriers of limestone and materials for cement production, I think it's fairly clear to us as BirdLife, and is demonstrated by our emphasis on partnerships with the minerals extractives, that collaboration and sort of co-developing thinking, innovation, and ways of moving forward to be able to deliver nature restoration, contributing therefore to the nature restoration plan through your restoration programs, your land banks and how they're managed and so forth, but also in terms of how we can help build capacity and contribute through you as businesses to wider ecological restoration, landscape restoration, particularly in the context of the geography of where your sites are and the surrounding landscape, and ensuring that plans for your sites are matched to the objectives for the surrounding landscape, and so forth. And I'd re-emphasize the point about your existing knowledge as restoration practitioners. You understand the technicalities of land restoration arguably better than most. And I think, therefore, the ability for this industry to contribute to the restoration of priority landscapes and the ecosystem services that they develop, those public benefits that come from restored ecosystems, and 80% of the landscapes in Europe are degraded. and they're delivering very significant ecosystem services at the moment, but the ability for them to deliver more with restoration is significant, and therefore the value of those is significant. And so I'd say that in terms of the financing, and this is an opportunity really to scope and develop, not just around nature credits, but around the value of the ecosystem services that quarrying is potentially going to provide, or is providing, but with potentially more scope and more capacity. Next slide, please. So you are, as businesses, going to be needing to work within the framework of the new legislation. You are and already are, previous to this, through your commitments to biodiversity and in essence the mitigation hierarchy, which is essentially to avoid impacts on protected areas, but you also, through that mitigation hierarchy, have opportunities to contribute to conservation of those areas through, for example, buffering, through the restoration, through the biodiversity management within operational quarries, and so forth. Your role is in, for example, we know that the cement industry has significant emissions, but if you look at your restoration and understand how that can help mitigate for some of those, when collectively the scale at which land is being restored and is sequestering carbon, is helping to filter and clean water and so on. These are not insignificant and really need to be considered alongside how you will need to respond in sort of legal terms to the new law. But also from the point of view of your supply chains, being at the head of the supply chain, providing materials that have come from sites that are well managed and with good restoration plans and a good restoration legacy, you have potential marketing opportunities there. The list, I think, speaks for itself right now. So next slide, please. And so in terms of how the financing and investment into businesses in relation to your restoration commitments, your contribution to the national plans, and how you, I think with good cause, make the case for your credentials as positive actors for nature restoration, will help bring in more attractive investment with better sort of loan rates and so forth, but also new markets. And I think this is one that's really worth focusing on. We as BirdLife have done some studies into ecosystem service values and looked at these derived from the quarry sector. There is, I'm thinking of two examples, but one of which in the Netherlands, which is involving flood mitigation, but when adding the value from the point of view of well-being and ecotourism to this, it's generating somewhere between, I just need to find my notes. Yeah, €15,000 a hectare a year in ecosystem service value. Now, for me, that is something that businesses could well do with considering how they monetize some of that, how they engage with the beneficiaries of those markets, and make something by way of return on investment into the business. And then innovation, and I think one of the things that was interesting to me was the scale at which the restoration law has been costed, and as an industry, you obviously have to spend quite a significant budget on your restorations. Now, another example that was, and this is of a limestone quarry in the UK, which had a restoration plan returning it to primarily to agriculture, and through working with the RSPB, a BirdLife partner in the UK, we were able to revise the restoration plan to limestone grassland across 80% of the whole of the site, and reduce the costs of restoration by somewhere around €1 million on a 120 hectare site. And so that is not, again, insignificant. And so, when you're thinking about your responsibilities, as in relation to the nature restoration law, you shouldn't necessarily be thinking this is going to cost us. There is the value of, and organisations like BirdLife very happy to help with this, but how you scope your delivery and the costs and the innovation opportunities to reduce those costs. I've touched on supply chains and I've touched on the national plans input. So next slide, please. So as was said, there's a lot of resources online to help you. There's the Bees web portal, which is excellent. When you get a copy of this presentation, those links, the underlines are live links to various bits of the website. So do explore. Next slide, please. And also the Restore Nature Coalition has produced quite a bit of materials itself in terms of how to contribute to getting the most out of the implementation of the nature restoration law. And in the notes, you'll find live links to those and some other publications. Next slide, please. So that's me. Thank you very much for the opportunity to kind of re-emphasize, I think, what Premislav was saying, and add a little bit of a dimension to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nigel. No, that was great. It brings a different view in, and certainly so helpful to have those slides of exactly where the industry can contribute. So thank you. I really like bringing out the element of the land banks. Of course, it's not just the quarries. We do have a lot of land out there that we're not working, and how can we use these? And I'm really hoping that this, as the national bodies create their plans, it leads to more strategic thinking about how quarry restoration can work in the landscape and how these can contribute to other actions that are happening. So no, thank you so much, Nigel. We have a question. I know Alexandra has put an answer in anyway, but I was wondering whether no, she answered a different question. I'm wondering how you feel about answering this, Nigel. So the question reads: I'm curious about how this regulation might shift quarrying patterns globally. Will restoration requirements make it more expensive to quarry in Europe? Would this regulation make it more attractive to quarry in other regions of the world with fewer environmental protections?
That is an interesting question. I think taking the last bit first, undoubtedly that is a potential. However, there are a number of things occur to me. One is that there is a tendency for where Europe goes, others will follow at some point and at some pace, at their own pace thereafter. And BirdLife Europe and Central Asia, and a lot of those Central Asian countries are what we might call developing countries, but they are starting to introduce really quite robust nature protection legislation and designations of sites themselves. So I I have a feeling that with the costs of transport of materials and that factor of other countries having, legislation and possibly reactive legislation that says we think that Europe should mine its own materials to some extent. Possibly that's going to be less the case. Is it going to be more expensive and more difficult? I think there is an opportunity, and not just in limestone quarrying, but in other quarry materials, where you have, for example, that the opportunity to do really significant ecosystem services, and that scheme that I said that was worth 15,000 a hectare a year in ecosystem services, that was driven by flood mitigation, not by access to in that case sand and gravel, but it was a ecosystem services first kind of thing. So I think there's going to be more of a balance, and I think that quarrying sector in general, embracing its legacy and its ambitions around nature restoration, and possibly are looking at opportunities rather than additional costs. But that's a personal view.
Thank you. Now, I feel the same way. I think this provides an opportunity to align what we're already doing and showcase what we're doing and really integrate it into other actions by different actors. I think that's exciting. And I think when the proposals were first drawn up, I think that's where the sector got excited and really looked at this as an opportunity that it's not about more, it's about using better what we're doing, and that joined up approach.
Your backdrop behind you exemplifies this to me, because that was a wetlands landscape that was drained for agriculture and is now being returned through quarrying to wetlands and delivering those ecosystem services, as well as all those birds and insects and so on. So it is it's quite, I like that.
Fabulous. Now that's a great segue onto the next part of our webinar. Now, usually, if you're staunch attendees of these webinars, you will know that we usually now hand over to the industry to showcase in practice what we're doing with the topic of the webinar. Now, in an ideal world, we'd all don on our boots and our coats and we'd head outside to actually see some practical restoration, because, of course, that is the best way to see what we're doing. But given that we've got attendees from all across Europe, that's a little challenging to do. So we've tried to go for the next best thing, and we have developed a virtual field trip for you to visit a number of quarries across Europe where practical restoration is happening on the ground right now. So I invite you to sit back. If you have some popcorn handy, that is always appropriate, but sit back and enjoy as we fly you around Europe to showcase some of the projects that our members are doing right now. Thank you. And Butter, we don't have the sound. And this is where technology totally fails us, but fingers crossed. Okay, it's flowing nicely, but still no sound.
In the test, it worked okay. Yes.
That's unlucky. And still no sound. Okay, I will try and share. No, I can't share sound either. Sorry about this, everyone. Okay, well, while we're trying to sort out technology, let's go for a few more questions. So we have a question for Shemislav, if that's okay. One about, so if I'll read the question out. The nature restoration regulation has not included explicit reference on the restoration of quarries, mines, brownfields, and other infrastructures with specific targets and indicators. And there is actually only one reference in the annex. What's the position of the European Commission in face of these challenges to comply with specific indicators to be an added value for restoration throughout Europe?
Well, I think it would have been extremely difficult to mention specific targets for all the relevant sectors, bearing in mind how many sectors create, first of all, pressures and threats to biodiversity, and how many sectors also can actively contribute to restoration measures. So there are targets in relation to sectors that are known to have the biggest potential in terms of mitigating the threats, like agriculture and forestry and fisheries, and then also there are some references to sectors like mining, but specifically in relation to critical raw materials, that the areas that are known to host critical raw materials, they need to be given a special attention in the preparation of the national restoration plans. But again, as I mentioned in my presentation, there is also this requirement to involve all the relevant stakeholders in the preparation of national restoration plans. But then in relation to the quarrying sector, the quarries, they already host a number of habitats and species that are listed in the Habitats Directive. And there are specific targets in relation to this habitat types and species in the nature restoration regulation. There are targets in terms of restoring the conservation of these habitats and species with specific quantified targets by 2030, 2040, 2050. And in terms of the habitats and habitats of species which are not doing well and which need specific measures to also establish these habitats and species in areas where they don't exist. There are also quantitative targets in the regulation. So I think the sector can really contribute with specific habitat types and species. And I would imagine that particularly in relation to pioneer vegetation, also the species that occupy this sort of ecological niches that are offered by the quarries, the sector can really contribute proactively here. Particularly for some bird species, but also invertebrates and amphibians that are doing really well in some of the still active quarries, but also in quarries that have been closed and are now subject to either passive restoration or active restoration measures. I think they can really thrive there. So I would not be particularly concerned about the fact that there are no specific targets for this sector, because I know that the sector can contribute in a meaningful, active way to the targets for other habitat types and species. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. We have one more question that I'd like to bring in yourself and Nigel and Alexandra for your perspective. So this is around the business case for the restoration of quarries, and what is the business case? Is it an initiative driven by regulatory requirements? And how so what are the barriers and opportunities that we need to overcome or build on to really scale this up across quarries? And I'm going to be cheeky and add in globally as well as just Europe. I don't know who wants to go first. Up to you.
Well, I can go, Cass. I already tried to answer. Well, the business case, of course, that regulations and legislation is important, and it's different for each country in Europe. But it's not only the business case. I think it exists a lot of proactive regarding the cement sector in rehabilitation, and in the reality, and I'm part of the cement sector, we have an impact on biodiversity. This is clear for us. So, and quarries have big life cycles. This is one of the barriers. So we need to start our work early in the life cycle of the quarry to implement the process of rehabilitation. So I'd say this is probably one of the barriers, the life cycle of the quarry, and also the scale of the quarries. We are working even within the quarry with different habitats. Don't forget that Symbio has a lot of members in different geographies in Europe, so with different type of habitats, ecosystems, and also climate zones. So it's not easy to define a business case for all the rehabilitation process. What I see in the cement sector regarding rehabilitation is I think we are increasing our knowledge throughout, for example, partnerships with NGOs, academia. I think this is a great opportunity for restoration and for the saving sectors, creating here a big knowledge in terms of the rehabilitation process. Also, a lot of members are developing scientific studies with academia, and this is also a very important opportunity. And don't forget that also we are creating several habitats in succession, different habitats in natural succession. So this also can be an opportunity for pioneer species, for pollinators, for wildflowers. Temporary habitat in active quarries can be also an opportunity because we have to deal with barriers like connectivity, habitat fragmentation. So this could vary in terms of quarry, of site, of course. But just to conclude that regarding the roadmap, it's a tool to help companies and challenge the salmon sector to manage biodiversity at their sites, at their quarries. We divide it in 4 focus areas. Of course, if you don't have an impact with invasive species, you will not focus on this area, but you have other focus areas that you can develop. And sometimes, I must say, you need to be creative on the rehabilitation process and follow the reality of the quarry.
So I thought that was an excellent response, Alexandra. And the only thing I think I would kind of add, coming from the NGO sector, is that there is always and always will be kind of resistance by the public to what they see as a negatively impacting land use like quarrying. And I think together we've got a role to improve the promotion of best practice, the examples of nature parks and so forth delivered. But also, and I know Heidelberg have got an active program of managing nature in operational quarries, others, and which they promote, but others are doing the same, perhaps without the promotion, but actually kind of the whole kind of process of quarrying and how that impacts on nature and how that's mitigated, and how actually the industry, particularly in the more developed parts of Europe, is adding to nature rather than taking away from it, because the land that is being quarried, as I said earlier, is often already degraded from a biodiversity point of view, and then you're creating habitats. So telling the story, I think, is a really important part of the development and promotion of the business case.
Great, thank you. So a little update on the film. We're having trouble. Zoom is not letting us share sound. It's graying out the box. We think we might have fixed it, but given that we're reaching time, I think what we will do is we will share the link to the video. It's available. Oh, we're trying one more time. It's available on YouTube. We have sound.
Hi, we are here at the nursery plant at Ceciliotown Cement Plant. We created this nursery plant a few years ago, where we produced the native species used on the quarry rehabilitation at Cecil. One of the advantages to have native species here, it's because they are adapted to the climate and soil conditions of the area we want to restore. So I consider this one of the main successes of the Quarry Rehabilitation project at Otown.
Hi, I'm Pedro Salgueiro, and I'm a researcher from MED from the University of Évora. Today I'm here at Cecil's Quarry to talk about restoration, but restoration applied to animal communities. And if you can look in my back, you can see 20-meter slopes, and you may ask yourselves if you are able to go up and down these slopes. Well, we thought about that, and one thing that we developed, which was a study with a wood mouse, which is a small mouse, and we attached them a signal that would allow us to follow the animal movements along the quarry. And for the surprise of everyone involved in the project, the animal was able to go up and down these slopes several times and go to the natural areas and come from every night from the natural areas to the restored area.
Намираме се в кариера Златна панега. Кариерата е основната кариера на Златна панега цимент и се разработва вече повече от 100 години. Преди 100 години тук е открит първият циментов завод в България заради качествените суровини. Тук открихме, че всъщност има много богато биоразнообразие, което означава, че няма естествени водоизточници, което е проблем за растенията и животните, които се срещат в района. Чрез днешната инициатива създаваме изкуствен водоем, като по този начин ще подпомогнем голяма част от които се срещат в района.
Hola, soy Luz Cerezo, responsable de las explotaciones mineras de Grupo Votorantín en la provincia de Sevilla y jefa de la gravera El Toril. Solicitamos de manera voluntaria un informe de biodiversidad a la Fundación Tormes que identificó más de 25 especies de valor ecológico en la zona. Entre ellas, el porrón pardo, una especie en peligro de extinción. Ha elegido El Toril como lugar de reproducción. Un claro ejemplo de que la minería y la biodiversidad pueden convivir. Gracias a este informe hemos mejorado nuestro plan de restauración, incluyendo el seguimiento anual de especies y la conservación de balsas para evitar que las aves pierdan su hábitat.
This is Bay Quarry. It's a quarry producing about 800,000 tons of limestone aggregates per year. But besides that economic value, it also holds a value for biodiversity. This quarry is important for migratory birds in that the surrounding vegetation can be a safe space to stay overnight. And also those of the birds that still need some energy to fly further will be able to forage on the insects or the plants that have set seeds. Then we have the ponds, and ponds can be temporary or permanent, and they will be nice for some of the amphibians here. So we have newts, we have midwife toad, and so on.
Une carrière qui va être bien réaménagée aura une vocation après le passage de l'exploitant. Cette vocation, elle peut être agricole, économique, mais aussi écologique. En France, on a de nombreuses carrières qui ont anciennement été exploitées et qui sont entrées dans le réseau Natura 2000 ou qui sont devenues des SNIEF ou des espaces naturels sensibles. Ici, on est sur un réaménagement à vocation écologique. On a choisi cette option parce qu'on est entre le Vercors et la Chartreuse et on est sur un corridor de biodiversité. Dans le cadre de l'étude d'impact, des espèces protégées et des espèces patrimoniales ont été inventoriées et dans le cadre du réaménagement, on a rajouté des touches, que ce soit des mares, que ce soit des prairies sèches, que ce soit certaines espèces végétales à ensemencer pour favoriser ces espèces.
Tunstead Quarry is one of Tarmac's biggest quarries and is located in both Derbyshire and the Peak District National Park. As well as undertaking the site's restoration, Tarmac is keen to explore the opportunities for biodiversity enhancements on areas that are both unworked and within the site's boundary. These works form part of the Biodiversity Management Plan, and in 2025, the site team completed an incredible 2 hectares of limestone grassland rehabilitation, clearing encroaching scrub and allowing space for finer floristic species such as rock rose, pyramidal orchids and cowslips.
Dawn Cassidy, I'm the Biodiversity Manager for Samex European Operations, but today I've really come to talk about this species, which is common juniper. It's in decline. It's a UK priority PAP species, but But here what we've done, the species was extinct locally, but it does grow and thrive on chalk grassland. It tolerates the hot, dry summers. So what we've done at the quarry is we've created a nursery for this species. And you can see that the trees are now starting to grow on. And I think it's a good testament as to what we can do because we've got the space and ability to initiate these sorts of projects. And it's important for rare or endangered species.
Buongiorno a tutti. In questo video vi parleremo dei recuperi ambientali delle nostre realtà, dove si estraggono marna, calcare e argilla per la produzione di cemento.
Siamo nella miniera di Albarola, in provincia di Piacenza, ambiente collinare. Abbiamo superfici in scarpata con pendenze che vanno dai 20 ai 30 gradi e superfici pianeggianti. In entrambi i casi, dopo aver profilato la marna con le pendenze da progetto, viene steso uno strato di materiale che per i colleghi cementieri viene considerato materiale di scarto, ma che per chi come me si occupa di recupero è materiale preziosissimo per formare un fondo tra la marna, in questo caso, e lo strato più superficiale di terreno fertile, ottenuto dalla porzione più superficiale della scopertura del giacimento.
Nous avons un partenariat stratégique avec la SWDE. Holcim fait tout pour contribuer donc à la gestion de son eau en parfaite concordance avec l'objectif durable du développement des Nations Unies. Donc on a une Nature Policy, on a une Water Directive, on a ce qu'on appelle des plans de gestion d'eau par site. Au niveau du groupe Holcim, on a un arsenal d'outils qu'on a mis en place. Les actions concrètes, c'est recycler l'eau. On a mis en place une presse à bout qui nous permet de récupérer 40 000 m3 d'eau, mais également des aménagements pour capter le ruissellement de l'eau. L'eau qu'on récolte en carrière, c'est principalement l'eau souterraine plus l'eau de pluie, qui s'appelle l'eau d'Exor. Et cette eau d'Exor, nous la fournissons à la Société Wallonne des Eaux. On parle en moyenne de 700 000 m3 d'eau qui sont fournis de notre carrière d'ici à Gorin à la Société Wallonne des Eaux, qui après la valorise. L'impact est positif. Premièrement, préserver la nappe. Deuxièmement, la valorisation de l'eau par la Société Wallonne des Eaux vers les populations locales et régionales, car l'eau va jusqu'en Flandre occidentale.
Okay, so that gives you a glimpse of what's happening across our quarries. That they're just a great example of the commitment of the industry and the potential of the industry. So we're reaching time, so I just want to wrap up and say a massive thank you to all our speakers today, to Alexandra, to Przemysław, to Nigel. This is the start. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of engagement. Please, again, my colleagues, go out and engage with your member states on their national restoration plans and see how we can really amplify what we've just seen now, and how that can contribute to bringing nature back into Europe. So I wish everyone a very good day. As I said, everything will be available afterwards, and please go and have a look at the video again. Our colleagues worked really hard to bring those to you today. So again, a big thank you to those that contributed to the film. Otherwise, I wish you a very good rest of the day, and no doubt see you soon at the next Cement Europe webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.